A little bit of a darkness there. Whoa. And with that, we are live for episode 80.
80. We are past the number of TOS episodes now.
Yes.
I've been waiting for that. 79 TOS episodes, 80 episodes of Trek Live. That means we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So.
First of all, how are you doing this morning, Bill? And what are we talking about today?
Doing good. Feeling good. Really excited to talk about this episode. We're talking about Star Trek Discovery's Light and Shadows, episode 7. We're officially halfway through season 2. So, which is really crazy. I say that every week, but now that we're officially 50% of the way through the season, it feels like yesterday that it was like we were hanging on every image, and like a trailer was like this monumental, like huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or season 2 kind of felt like, we're never going to get to it. It's taking forever. And we're already halfway through the season. So, yeah, really excited to talk about this episode. It's definitely a eventful one, as they always are. There's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of setup for what's coming in the second half of the season. Finally got a big payoff that I think we're sort of payoff that we got to talk about. And yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on season 2 as a whole so far at the 50% mark, the halfway point. And yeah, I don't have any rewatch. Like we usually start these conversations with rewatch updates. I'm still in the same place I was. My plan though is to finish TOS between today and tomorrow. I have 9 episodes to go. I want to try to watch a few today and a few tomorrow and knock it out, and then get into the TOS movies next weekend. So that's the plan. I don't know if it's overly ambitious. 9 episodes I used to be able to do in my sleep. I haven't been in that groove in a while, watching that many at one time, but I'm going to try to get it done. But before we get into Light and Shadows, what about you? Have you watched any
yeah, so the next
Discovery Star Trek?
I've watched 2 episodes. The next episode that I have is Gambit, which is the 4th episode.
Two-parter.
So I'm excited to kind of start that 2-parter. I don't remember a whole lot about it. Bits and pieces.
It's a good time. It's fun. It's not as. I mean, I guess it is. There's a lot of. By the end of it, it's got big stakes, but it feels like it's a little bit more of like a romp and kind of like a casual good time than some of the more like Best of Both Worlds, Redemption, even Unification, sort of like big picture, like galactic, ground swelling, like earth shattering kind of events that are kind of building off of those episodes. So I'm curious to hear what you think. What did you think of Liaisons and Interface? They're two. They're not often on top 10 lists.
No, they're middle of the road for me. I think that.
Yeah.
Nothing really to write home about or to write Trek Live about, I'll say.
yeah, not a lot to go into if we're just having like casual conversation. Like we usually do. They're not incredibly memorable episodes by any means. Liaison's got some. I think it has some decent humor with Worf and the ambassador he's assigned to, being confrontational, and I like some of that stuff. But yeah, you got some better stuff coming with Gambit, and even some episodes that are kind of right after that. Cool. So keep an eye on Twitter, for me at least. Hopefully later today I'll have episodes like The Way to Eden and Requiem for Methuselah and all that good stuff coming in the next couple of days. So
all right.
So Light and Shadows.
Yes.
Episode 7.
Spoilers if you haven't watched it,
Yes.
definitely go watch it. And then come back and join us. Yeah. Bill, what'd you think of the episode overall?
I loved it. I thought it was great. I was a fan. I thought the A-B plot, I think we talked about last week, that it didn't, Sound of Thunder didn't quite have like the A-B plot structure that a lot of this season and a lot of traditional Star Trek had. It was just kind of the Saru Kaminar story, and this one definitely has like a distinctive, two-handed thing going. You have Burnham on Vulcan, and eventually with Section 31 discovering Spock and trying to figure out what's going on with Spock and uncrack the quandary that Spock has going on in his head. Yeah. And then you have the Discovery still at Kaminar, kind of trying to discover what's behind the red signals that appear in the aftermath of them leaving, and discovering, you know, all the tachyon emissions that have been kind of talked about for the past couple episodes being left behind when these signals appear and leave. They get into trying to figure out what all that means, and they get sucked into this time tsunami, as Tilly calls it, where there's like all kinds of wacky classic Star Trek singularity anomaly stuff happening. So you have these two storylines that I think both work pretty well. And the Pike Tyler on the shuttle stuck in the time rift thing definitely made me think of old school Trek stuff in TNG, stuff in Voyager. We never quite got like that specific kind of story or anything, but that sort of problem solving spatial anomaly sort of situation felt comfortable in old school Star Trek kind of way. And then I felt like we were getting not necessarily a satisfying payoff to the Spock stuff, but at least there's momentum there. Like the Spock's been found, that story's moving forward. We got a lot of cool stuff with Sarek and Amanda and the whole family dynamic. Amanda kind of taking the reins a little bit with the whole situation and hiding Spock and not wanting to turn him over and trying to protect him behind Sarek's back. Like the whole family dynamic of that was interesting to me, and it was welcome. Yeah. What did you think overall? Just kind of broad level.
I liked it. I think like you talked about the structure. I think I like that too. I wasn't ever like when I was with the B plot, I wasn't wishing I was with the A plot. I had similar feelings to previous episodes of Discovery where there was A and B plot structure, but I wasn't feeling like I was always wanting to get back to a certain plot line or something like that. So I think it was a very strong episode.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like there are definitely times where, especially in old school Trek, there are times where that B plot feels maybe somewhat tacked on, and you're always kind of eager to get back to the main story. And I never felt like that here. I felt like it was kind of they're on parallel tracks. Like I'm as interested in both. And that's always a welcome thing. I also felt like this episode moved really well. I thought it was well paced. I really liked the direction. I thought there were really cool like scene transitions that weren't standard. They were cool like visual transitions. TrekCore just posted a GIF or GIF of the shot of like the shuttle in warp transitioning to a shot on the Discovery, like really smoothly and interestingly. It's not just like a clean cut going back and forth between these stories most of the time. I noticed that and really liked that. I thought there was some innovative direction going on. I just thought as a whole it really moved really well. It was 40 minutes, and it leads me to think, I don't know how you feel about this, that most of the episodes this season, I think this and New Eden are two that were like under 45 minutes. The majority of the episodes this season have been inching like beyond the 50-minute mark, close to an hour sometimes. Brother obviously being the longest at like over an hour and a minute or something, 61, 62 minutes. But like Sound of Thunder and Saints of Imperfection are all like 54, 55, 58 minutes when it lights like that. Do you think the shorter runtime is advantageous? Like, does it keep it moving faster? Like, do you feel like some of these other episodes are maybe a little bloated? Are they too long? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's just a question. Like, do you notice a difference in the pacing between an episode like Saints of Imperfection and something like The Sound of Thunder, which is 20 minutes longer?
It might be different in the way that the episode is structured. Also, like we talked about A and B plot. But I think what we talked about last week, less is more as far as direction goes. The same thing with runtime. I feel like there's a reason why mainstream TV, besides like commercials and stuff, it's a 45-minute long episode, where I think they have most experience, and people, the writers, they have the most experience writing for that. I think that's kind of their sweet spot. I'm obviously not mad that they're pushing that. It just means more traffic.
Yeah, me neither.
So,
yeah. I certainly, I love it when I look like on CBS All Access when the episode posts. First thing I look at is like, how long is it? And when it's 58 minutes, I'm like, ooh, nice. Like it's juicy, it's big. There's going to be a lot happening. I want the longer running times for sure because I want as much Star Trek as possible. But it struck me watching this one like how fast it felt, and I'm sure the running time played a factor in that. But I also remember last year, kind of on the flip side of this, like Vaulting Ambition, I remember is like 39 minutes long. It's one of the shorter episodes, and I remember thinking, and the episode before that was The Wolf Inside, which is like beyond 50. It's like 53, 54 minutes, I think. And I remember when Vaulting Ambition aired, I remember thinking that the episode was shorter by 15 minutes, but it felt like it was longer. Like it felt, it didn't feel as well paced as The Wolf Inside, which is a longer episode. So I guess it's episode by episode. It's whatever the story needs, more so than kind of a clean cut like shorter's better, longer's better. But I felt like this episode, for being shorter, on the shorter end of things compared to the other episodes, I think this episode was as long as it needed to be because it moved like a freight train, and there was no fat. It didn't feel like it was dragging at any point for me. Felt like it worked on that level. Especially.
Yeah. Do you think that I don't know, I kind of want to get into the change in the writing room.
Sure.
Do you think that it would have went a different direction? Would they have not found Spock as fast? Because I feel like in that aspect, I don't know. Like I feel like it was too easy to find.
Too easy
Spock.
to find him.
Because they built up this whole long thing throughout the first half of the season, trying to find Spock, and then they're right.
He's on Vulcan.
Yeah, he's on Vulcan. So, do you think that's the way they planned it, or do you think it's because of the change in the writing room? What do you think?
I don't know. I think the way that I guess there's not enough information for me to feel confident to answer that, because I feel like I've heard them talk about the writers kind of plotting out the season in advance and kind of having a pretty good idea of like where the direction's going to go, and not necessarily coming up with things on the fly so much. Like they do, each episode's its own thing, and they have their own writers, and I'm sure like the details of them are worked out as they go. But I don't know. Like who knows if they kind of knew from the beginning when they were kind of cracking the story that around this time in episode 6 or 7 they're going to find Spock, and it's going to be under these circumstances, and Amanda's going to, who knows how much of that was decided before the writing change. But it's certainly, I agree with you. Like there's definitely an element of like they kind of, you could see how somebody could jump to the conclusion of, or get to the conclusion that they were just kind of ready to resolve that storyline. Yeah. And enough of chasing his shuttle and, piecing together information. Let's just find him and keep moving forward. And, for sure, like there's definitely an element of, really, he was on Vulcan the whole time. Like, how long was he on Vulcan? I don't even know. I don't remember if there was a conversation like, how did and then where did he end up? There. I think there was a line of dialogue about Spock reaching out to Amanda, maybe.
He asked for my help.
So so I guess he left Starbase 5 and somehow set a trap that made people think he was in that shuttle flying off, but somehow I ended up back at Vulcan with the help of Amanda. So, and I guess because Amanda went to Starbase 5 to go find him and wasn't there, that was like, if you think back to Point of Light, Amanda went to Starbase 5 to visit Spock and he was already gone. So
maybe
was that
was
just like a ruse to throw him off? Amanda got him somehow. So there's possibilities there that people's headcanons are going to have to probably fill in unless they double back and they fill in gaps retroactively. But I know I remember asking you on a lot of these previous streams, talking about these previous episodes, how's the Spock pacing kind of working for you, and that there was a lot of conversation about just find him already, let's go. And how did you feel about that? And you were pretty consistently like, it didn't bother you, like you were not in a rush to find Spock. You're ready to let that story play out, and you were like ready for a satisfying payoff. So Can't talk to him. He's not.
Yeah, so I still think that it's still that search for Spock is kind of pun intended. It's still going on.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only problem I have with it is it was kind of a little bit too easy of how they built it up throughout the season. But I think that I think it's still interesting that they're still kind of pushing that search because they haven't really found him. It's still unraveling the mystery. So the mystery like hasn't gone out the airlock or anything like that. It's still leaving me excited for the next episode, excited to be able to like actually talk to Spock and and find out this mystery with the Red Angel. So I think it's still successful. It's just that one element that's a little unsettling for me.
Yeah. What did you think of the couple little visual things? Like we got really good looks at the shuttlecrafts in this episode. Burnham's in a shuttle, Pike and Tyler are in a shuttle. And then I'm also curious about what did you think of like the look of Vulcan when they're on Vulcan? You spent a good bit of time on the planet. Some cool exterior shots of like the shuttle landing outside the Sarek home, and then the cave with the Khatri stones, and what looks a lot like the Kirshara, the artifact that they're really looking for in that 3-episode arc in Enterprise.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's who knows what that is, but it definitely made me think of that as a hardcore Enterprise fanboy.
Yeah.
But what did you think of like that kind of visual stuff? The shuttle, the Vulcan production design.
I'll start with the shuttles. I love the shuttles. I love anytime we get to see a shuttle in Star Trek because I feel like, the hero ship, gets mostly the exposure, obviously, but it's cool to be able to see 2 plot lines based on a shuttle. I think they fit the era very well. I think Tom Paris would be proud because there's switches and a bunch of
dials,
tactile interfaces that they can. Not just a screen, which I think is really cool.
I love that too. Yeah.
As far as Vulcan, it felt Vulcan to me. I think, like you said, it built on elements that we saw in Enterprise. But yeah, it felt like Vulcan to me.
Yeah, the Sarek home. We saw a little bit of it in the flashback at the very beginning of the episode with young Burnham and young Spock.
Yeah,
and we got flashbacks in this one too with young Burnham and young Spock. But it definitely reminds me of T'Pol's house in Home. Like I sense a lot of the similar. I see a lot of the similar, architecture and furniture style and stuff like that. Production design is definitely taking cues from that stuff, and I appreciate that. So I agree. I loved. I love that it was raining on Vulcan. Like I thought that was different and cool. Like makes it feel more like a real place. Like it's not just always a desert.
Yeah.
Like it's a more lived in, feasibly.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like a real planet. It's not just like just the desert planet.
Yeah.
I like that. I appreciated that. And I loved the Kirshara looking artifact that he's got there, and I thought the cave was a cool set. Like I said, I like that scene. If I had to pick like a favorite scene, it was probably that when the Spock family is having its bizarre family reunion.
Yeah.
Like nothing smooth about that family reunion.
Nope.
There's lying and subterfuge everywhere. So I thought that was cool. I thought there was a lot to unpack there, and I kind of want to go back and just watch that scene and just like listen to it and hear all the ins and outs of the dialogue. But yeah, all the visual stuff in this was great. I can't echo you enough that I loved the cool shots of like the control panel on the shuttlecraft. Like I feel like we really got to feel which is like frantic and like a lot of camera movement. This one felt a little more grounded and a little more smooth, and it really lets you take in the sets and the production design and all the visual stuff, and no less so than on the shuttlecraft. I loved all the shuttlecraft scenes. It really reminded me of old school, like cool Star Trek. So I think that the shuttles look like 23rd century shuttles, like for the most part. They remind me of the shape of like the Galileo from the Galileo 7, and other episodes, obviously from TOS with the shuttle. That design works for me. It looks cool. And I love the little cue, like the throwback to, I don't know if you caught it, but Pike saving the shuttle by like expelling the fuel and lighting it up, just like Spock did in the Galileo 7. He used it as like a flare to try to get the ship's attention. I thought that was cool. A nice little nod to Star Trek continuity, especially given the era. Yeah.
Yes. Let's see. What did you think of the Section 31 stuff?
It's. I want to. I don't want to say it's the hardest thing that I have to grapple with. I love Michelle Yeoh. I like the actor who plays Leland a lot. I want to see where this story's going. I want to see where Section 31 kind of ends up at the end of it. Like, I still do, if I'm being honest, struggle a little bit with Section 31 being so out in the open and having, such a fully functional crew and doctors on the ship with the blacks. Yeah, that stuff. Yeah, like I want to see where they're going with that. I want to see how they pay that off and see what the context is going to be like in the grand scheme of Star Trek history. But I love the actors who are involved in those scenes. I love the production design of that ship too. I love the Section 31 ship. I like the design of the ship. And there's some cool little twists and turns in that. And with it makes perfect sense to me that Georgiou would be up to no good and kind of manipulating everyone in sight and trying to one up Leland. She obviously is not a fan of Leland and wants to, get over top of him, and will do anything to make that happen. And I'm curious about the line at the end of their little segment of the episode where Georgiou kind of implies that Leland was somehow involved with, the truth behind Burnham's parents' death. Like, that definitely made me raise an eyebrow. Like, that's something I didn't see coming, and I'm not sure. I want to know more about it because I'm not sure we need that. I don't know that we need all that extra stuff about Burnham's parents' death, and we need to add Section 31 to that story. But I'm open to it. I want to see where they're going to take it and what that means. How involved were they with that situation? But I like my Section 31 in. The biggest challenge for this season to me, I think, is I like Section 31 in small doses. Like, I like them to pop in, take care of business, and get out. And the longer you see them and the more you see them, the less it sort of makes sense to me. So I want to see where they're going with it. I want to see how it plays out and how they make it all fit. But what do you think about Section 31?
I have to agree. I think the more we see them, it kind of takes away from Section 31. I think that I don't want to see them patrolling. They should be, cloaked or in the shadows. The thing that I like about Section 31 and the reason why I brought it up is because I hope, this is my prediction, is Georgiou, they weren't going to find it. Find, the answers themselves. So I wanted her to turn Spock loose so they would find it and they would follow them, because I think that would be kind of Section 31-esque, I think.
Yes.
And I think it would be a cool layer to Michelle Yeoh's character, that she's not just like this one-dimensional evil, chick. I think she's doing it. She's manipulative and doing all these things, and makes you think, well, does she care about Burnham or does she not? It's just adding layers to it and not being one-dimensional. So I hope that's the direction they go.
There's enough little I kind of have a connection with you. There's enough gray there where I like where they're going with why she's doing it, and does she like Burnham and respect Burnham and want to not see anything bad happen to Burnham. I like where you're going with that and where you would like to see the story go. I hope it continues down that path. Or that they really capitalize on that idea, because I think the worst impulse for any character like Georgiou is to make them one-dimensional and just a mustache twirling. I just do bad things because I'm just flat out bad. Yes. Like, there's got to be a little more to it than that.
Motivation and stuff.
Yeah. There's got to be more depth to characters like that. I think, and I think we got a little, maybe, possibly, sort of taste of it here, but I'd like to see that play out a little more. And I think that's a really fascinating. At the end of the day, Georgiou also thinks that it's beneficial for Burnham and Spock to be kind of out there, just so that they can observe and like see where it's going to go and be a watchful eye over the whole thing, and they may get more valuable information that way than to just use a mind scanning device that leaves Spock, a vegetable. Like they were kind of implying that they were going to, yank all his memories out, but that was going to be that for Spock. I'm really anxious to see where it's going. I want to see the Section 31 stuff play out a little bit more. I want that context, the grand scheme of things. And if they execute it well and it ends at a point where it kind of makes sense and the whole Section 31 dynamic is more interesting as a result, then I'm all for it. But coming into this, I definitely had the attitude of the less Section 31, the better, as far as not because I don't like them, but because I think they're at their best when they're, used in small doses and covert and in the shadows, right? Not so much operating out in the open. But so far, so mostly good.
Yeah.
How did you feel about like the cool, like in my opinion, cool like visual stuff with the time stuff, like at the very beginning when they introduced Pike getting up out of the chair and having Tyler like flips him the Section 31 comm badge, and then Pike turns around and he sees that play out again, like cool special effects like behind him. Did all that stuff work? Like the way they were, I don't know, the special effects and visual effects of that time distortion.
Yeah. No, it works. I think it added to the story, because if we look at it later on in the episode, we see it play out before it, and it kind of alters Pike's perception and kind of makes you wonder, like, oh, is Tyler gonna be bad? Are they gonna throw down? It's it's a little bit more mystery, but I think it was a cool thing that they used that like the visual effects and that effect from the story to, like, I don't know, add to this dynamic between Tyler and Pike. So yeah, I thought it worked great. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I problem and come out of it with more respect than they had before. Like that, how many times have we seen that in Star Trek between, Bashir and O'Brien and, name your example.
Ensign Rowe and
Spock and McCoy, Ensign Rowe and whoever. Tom Paris and B'Elanna. Like, the things don't necessarily start like, oh, we're friends now. Like sometimes that might happen, but people who are at odds at the beginning of a situation don't necessarily stay at odds. And I thought that felt very classic Star Trek again. They're, slow coming to an understanding and learning to live with each other, I guess. We'll see how long that lasts, if that's going to be a long-term thing or if they're going to butt heads again. I suspect they will. But I like the way that story played out, and I like the way that anomaly telegraphed that, like, oh, is he going to shoot him? Like, is he going to have to stun him? Get out of this or something? Is it going to get really bad? And it turns out not. There's more to it than that. And, so I really enjoyed that side of the story for sure.
Yeah.
What do you got?
What did you think of next week? Because I feel like this opens a whole can of worms. And your thoughts on the start?
Where they're going?
Yeah, where they're going. Maybe past episodes of Trek that they kind of referenced.
Yeah, I mean, if we kind of had some, I don't know if you were paying attention enough, like in the off season where little things were leaked out. I think there was some indication that maybe the Talosians be appearing at some point, but never in a million years that I think Star Trek would ever do this again, like Talos 4 and the Talosians. Like it's just like crazy to me that's where it's going in a good way. I think it's really cool, and as much as I kind of knew that maybe that was when I was genuinely surprised when the computer spit out that's what these numbers are, and that's we're going there now. I love the fact that at the end of the Cage, like just watching the Cage, at the end of that story, you don't know. They don't tell you anything about like a planet's banned forever. There's no indication of that happening. That happens between the Cage and like TOS when you get to the menagerie and all that stuff. So I suspect that this storyline and their involvement with the Telosians is going to lead to, why going to that planet carries a death penalty, which is kind of ridiculous and over the top on its surface. Is like that. It's just a little strange. Like that's the one thing that you could get capital punishment for is going to that planet. But I think this story can tell us why. Like the consequences of going there might be catastrophic. You can't go there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm just really excited that they're picking. I mean, it certainly makes sense because Pike's involved, and I imagine he's gonna get involved with the Talos 4 stuff too. But like on its surface, it makes sense, with Pike involved, that's a story that they would play with because it's the one story that we ever had with Pike. Mm-hmm. But it's just not something that a year and a half ago I ever would have expected to see again. Mm-hmm. That alien species, that planet. So I'm just really excited and really curious to see where they go with it and what's going to happen. I suspect the Telosians are going to be the key to unlocking Spock's mind and getting him out of his funk. And given how powerful they are with those sorts of things. What do you think?
I feel like this season they have been like, kind of waiting in previous canon and stuff, and I feel like with Talos 4 it's like cannonball.
Yeah, we're going in,
we're diving into something that pretty big and a lot of people know about, so I think that again it's Discovery doing something we didn't expect, and that's I should expect that from Discovery, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I'm kind of blown away just as much as you are, so I'm excited as well.
What did you think of the look of the Telosians in the trailer?
I think it looked I think they looked good. I think that if they had visual effects like that in the 1960s, we'd probably see something like that. So
yeah. I on first glance, for sure, I was like, "Holy shit, they're Telosians!"
Yeah,
that's really cool. Like the silver outfit, the necklace, like it's subtly different. Yeah, it's subtly different, but it's darn close. It's no more different than like the Tellarites are, or the Andorians are. There's a little bit more detail to it. There's a little bit, a little bit more, a little more work put into the details. But it's I think it's incredibly faithful to like the overall like general idea. And like you said, you can easily extrapolate. Like it's not a radically different idea. It's what they could have done with more resources and more, more time, more money. In 1964 or 1966, when they were creating Telosians. So I was really pleased by that. I didn't necessarily expect to see them in the trailer. I thought they were going to like hold that off. If I can complain about one thing with Discovery, there are times where I wish their trailers, like I'm an idiot, so I'll never do it. I'll never be like, nope, I'm not watching the trailer. But there are times where I wish I would, because sometimes they throw in just enough to like, like the things that I would like surprised, like seeing the Telosians. I sometimes wish maybe weren't in the trailers, but what are you gonna do? That's an age-old problem. It goes to movies and old school Star Trek. People used to complain about the same thing.
I do still think they're playing their cards close to the chest about because there's still a lot we don't know about the Red Angel, and we got a little bit from this episode about future and their plans. I got as far as like that, like the Red Angel stuff. What do you think going forward?
This episode asks a question.
Yeah.
Then it answers. Like we've talked about in previous weeks. Early on, it really felt like, I was on Pike's side with the idea that the Red Angel and the signals are benevolent and pulling the crew to places that need help. Last week, I started asking questions about that because it wasn't such a clear-cut thing they were being pulled toward, and that didn't play out quite as cleanly as, say, the New Eden and Brother situations did. And then this episode, when they get a taste through this temporal anomaly of what's kind of on the other end of that, potentially, I think they say 500 years in the future, so that would be what, the 28th century. Their contact with the probe that's sent back is not pleasant. You know, it's attacking the shuttle. It seems like it's, you know, ripping all its information out. So yeah, it leads to questions like whatever sent that probe back with the technology enhancements, is that the same thing that the Red Angel is coming from? Was it meant to be adversarial to the shuttlecraft? Like, was it you know, designed to attack the shuttle, or was it just, you know, trying to do its thing and, you know, destroying the shuttle and hurting the crew was kind of an accident? You know, who knows? There's at least a lot of questions about, you know, what's on the other end of the, you know, the time gap that's doing this. And I think that's to the show's benefit, because I think the show is leaning heavily into is this debate between Pike and Tyler, Starfleet and Section 31, about, you know, is it good, is it bad? Should we be open-minded and have our arms open and ready to make first contact and do the right thing and be good, or should we be skeptical and be on our toes and ready to fight and have a more pessimistic attitude going into contact with something like this, like Section 31 would probably lean towards? And, you know, the added complications that we're kind of getting, you know, makes you think about it, and it puts the shoe on the other foot a little bit, which I think is a necessity, I guess. If that's the kind of story they're going to talk about. Yeah,
again, Discovery playing with our perceptions on alien species and different situations. So I think it's successful in that way. Just, again, I don't know what to think. And
me neither. Like I said, I'm more confused about it now than I was. That's for sure. I thought 2 weeks ago, and I should have seen it coming, that it was going to get more complicated if they were going to false. But I was, you know, thinking clearly it's going to be something. And when Burnham discovers like Spock's log and talking about the visions he's having, like Spock clearly seems to think that it's not a good thing. You know, he talks about it as being something that could do a lot of damage and is something to be reckoned with. So I think, you know, early on it was sort of telegraphed that, you know, it wasn't going to be as simple as this is a good thing. And we just need to understand it. There's more to it than that. And it may ultimately end up there. It may end up being something that's ultimately a positive, but just going to have to find out. And I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter about this, and I too, if you think back to about this point in season 1, by this point in season 1, halfway through, we were kind of wrapping our heads around the idea of, is Lorca from the Mirror Universe? Is he a bad guy? You know, is he a good guy? Like, we're definitely thinking about that and kind of feeling like we kind of know where that's going. We had a pretty good idea of who Ash Tyler was and what happened to Voq. Like, all that stuff was kind of rattling around in our heads, and we had a pretty good idea, I think, of where it was going. And I'll give this season credit that the twist that it's obviously going to throw our way at the halfway point, I don't have a good feeling for where it's going. I'm completely blind to where it's gonna end up, which I didn't feel last year. Last year, I kind of, it felt a little bit like you're just waiting for the shoe to drop and you're waiting for the reveal to happen. You know, some things maybe, and I think you and I were both kind of hoping that Lorca was not necessarily just going to be the bad guy. At the time, we thought maybe it would be a little more complicated than that. But I think that idea was always there, and you're kind of just waiting for it to happen. There was something else I was going to ask you about. What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you first.
I'm just real quick. I'm nervous. Kind of what you kind of talked about, like waiting for the shoe to drop. That this might just be an invasion, and I hope that's not the case. I feel like there's different, because we've seen the invasion. I can count. You know, we've seen it in Enterprise, obviously, Sphere Builders. We've seen it in Deep Space Nine. That was a big big plot point in that series. So I'm curious to see if it's, I don't know, what it is. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I agree. I hope it's not as simple as a pure evil invasion. That's, I hope there's more nuance and more of a Star Trek twist to it than that. I think we have, especially with modern, like newer Trek, I think we have our share of bad guys just being bad and causing problems just because.
Yes.
And I hope that there's a more TOS spin to it where it's more about lack of understanding and lack of context than just having to be the bad guy.
Yep.
So one can hope.
Yep. What were you gonna say?
I was going to ask you, kind of going back to the Spock, Amanda, Sarek. Like, does that? I kind of alluded to that scene being a highlight for me when they're all together and Amanda reveals that, and I guess you kind of already talked about it. You said that the discovery of Spock maybe came a little quick and a little easy. But how do you feel about more broadly, like Amanda being involved to that extent and taking charge of the situation and not wanting to turn Spock over and hiding him from Sarek? Like, did you buy that? Did you think that was legit, credible?
Yeah, I think it was credible. I think that I can definitely see that happening. It didn't feel out of place in any way. I felt like it definitely worked. I feel like that dynamic between almost everyone is just kind of, it added some more texture to it. I love that they kind of reference Alice in Wonderland again and the dynamic that Spock and Burnham had early on. I thought it was great, that aspect of the episode in itself.
I think it was well set up by Point of Light, where Amanda talks a lot about her regrets raising Spock. I think when Amanda kind of realizes that not only was Sarek and her, like, not only were they as parents to Spock and trying to raise him as Vulcan and, and having that, kind of realizing that the way they raised him may have caused problems. The knowledge that she gets in Point of Light that Burnham hurt him as well, I think it makes it really credible that she has a protective instinct and doesn't want to, doesn't really trust anybody with Spock. She wants to maintain control of the situation as the mother and protect at all costs. So I think that stuff in Point of Light, all those conversations between Burnham and Amanda, really do a nice job of building to this crescendo with the Amanda Spock dynamic. Keeping Sarek and Burnham kind of in the dark about it because of her own personal regrets about the way she raised Spock, but also the knowledge of the way Sarek was with him and the way Burnham was with him. She doesn't really have faith in the way other people handle her son.
Yeah, and I think that adds to Point of Light, because now those conversations and that discussion carry way more weight than we already know about. So I think the rewatchability is definitely going to go up as well. So
yeah, which is that modern TV, the way these stories play out, you never quite know. That's why I'm always hesitant to, like, on Twitter rank like I do rank the episode. I just did it this week and like chime in and say on gut check, this is what I'm thinking right now. But I try not to like label an episode with a grade or anything yet, because you don't know like how these stories play into each other and what's setting up what. Wanting to wait and see, how things are paid off in the future for totally passing judgment, but kind of feeling a little cold in the initial watch of it, in the context of seeing it as the third episode of the season without knowing what was coming, because so much of it was setting things up that weren't paid off yet.
Yep.
So yeah, I was glad to see some of those threads from Point of Light coming back. And I'll say this, I think the actress who plays Amanda is really good, Mia Kirshner. I think she really does a nice job. And I've already said, I think James Frain is like one of the secret weapons of the show. I think every time he's on screen, it's elevated. I think he I don't want to say he steals every scene he's in, but you know, every moment he's on screen, the show is working for me. I think he's really, really good.
Yeah, and I think he feels like Sarek, but I think that it's also he brings new stuff to the table, and
yeah,
you can kind of, especially in that, you know, I don't know, when they're that family discussion, you can feel the emotion, but he's not showing it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you can feel it. Yeah.
Which is what Vulcans do. There is emotion there. It's bubbling under the surface, and they're doing everything they can to bury it. And it makes sense that it's bubbling when it's something as grave and personal as it is here, where he's dealing with his kids and his wife. And you know, I think you can sort of see it beneath the surface, but he's doing everything he can to suppress it. He's not expressing it. He's not acting on it. But I think James Frain's really good at playing that stuff. And I believe him as Sarek. I believe him as a younger version than we saw before in Journey to Babel and beyond in the movies. So yeah, I think he's one of their best actors on the show. I'm always happy to see him. Who is the MVP of this episode? It's kind of tough because it's so spread out.
Tough.
There's so many moving parts.
Man, I don't. It's really tough. I don't know. Maybe the direction, you know, the writing, some of the actors. I mean, that's a tough call. Who's the MVP for you?
I'm tempted to go with the direction because, like I said, those transitions, the scene transitions, and the pacing of it. I think it moves really well. I credit her a lot for that. I love the production design of it. But if I was talking about actors, I think I'm torn between Mia Kirshner as Amanda. I think her scenes are the best in the episode. The scenes where she's involved, and I gotta say, when he has a lot to do, Anson Mount as Pike, freaking great. Every time he's on screen, I love that guy. He's tough to go away from when he's involved, and I think he had more to do in this episode than maybe the past few. He's tough to walk away from if you're talking about MVPs of episodes. So he'd get a lot of consideration, and I remember the episode ending and saying Shazad Latif too. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think he's a good actor. I'm glad that he's on the ship and has a role, and I didn't see this coming. I didn't think like his story was going to be
back on the bridge.
So entwined with back on the bridge and entwined with Pike. Like I didn't know that was. I never would have guessed that. Like before the season started, that's where that character was going, and that's where his conflict was going to be. And I'm glad that that's where we are. I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty good turn. But I think Cindy Martin Green's always awesome. She's an easy pick too. Whenever I think she's really good. But I think I'd go with Mia Kirshner or Anson Mount if we're talking actors. And at the end of the day, I might go with the direction.
Okay.
Big picture wise, yeah. How does this episode rank for you?
I was just gonna ask you. I think it's 2.
2.
2 for me. Yep.
Just under An Oval for Sharon?
Yep.
Is that your favorite?
And then New Eden 3. I'm just looking at my notes here. And then The Sound of Thunder, and then etc. But I think 2. I really like this episode, actually. Yep.
Yeah. My dad is in the chat and is talking about watching Star Trek 4 last night, and Spock and Sarek talking at the end of the movie. His thoughts went to Discovery, which is kind of what I've been saying all along. That I love the most about Discovery is that it adds new layers and textures to the old stuff, which I think is really cool. To add new layers to a 50-year-old show and 35-year-old movies, I think it's a good thing.
Yep.
Keep it relevant moving forward, even more so than it was already.
What about?
But yeah, for me, I would say probably 3rd.
Okay.
I think An Oval for Sharon and New Eden. I'm still really high on. Yeah. I love those 2, and I love this one. I closer to those 2 than it is the episodes that are below it. The next group of episodes would be like Saints of Imperfection and Sound of Thunder, Brother. I think it's edging closer to those top 2 than that group. But I don't know. One of the things that I really want to do, I really want to TOS this weekend. But I'm really kind of jonesing to watch like the 7 episodes in a run, just to kind of get a feel for how it flows as a binge, like with a bunch of episodes to kind of lump together and see it play out. Some things paying off, and by this point, I think it's a good time to kind of check it out as a binge show. So I'm going to try to do that. I don't know if I'll get it done in the next week. It might end up being the first 8 episodes, maybe next week. But I am eager to go either way with that. Maybe I know you're not quite as big on Whedon, and like Saints of Imperfection and Sound of Thunder, Brother. I think they're all pretty fluid. I think like a fresh watch on those 3 could shake that up pretty considerably for me.
Yeah.
But I feel good about this one being in the top 2 or 3.
Okay.
And more so than maybe any episode since Brother, I'm left wanting more like now. Like I really want to know what's coming with the Talos 4 stuff and the Section 31 stuff. Like I'm eager to see where it feels like it's really starting to turn, which makes sense. We're halfway through it. It's starting to really come together, and cards are kind of on the table a little bit for the season as a whole by now.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot real quick because now it's out and I can talk about it. I was on Trek Ranks this week.
Which I have not listened to yet.
You did not listen to it yet, which is good. This is even better.
Yeah.
And the topic was 5 favorite ships, starships. I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily to do a top this, but gut check, like what ships would you definitely have on your list if you were doing that topic? Like what ships immediately come to mind as like not necessarily a full top 5, and I'm not looking for ranking, but when you think of like what are my favorite ships in Star Trek history, what are the first ones that pop into your head?
First ones that pop into my head are Voyager. I think that I obviously have a connection to. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
So I think Voyager is definitely the. Is that the first one that pops into mind? I also like the original, TOS 1701. I think that it's just classic. I know a lot of people forget about it and kind of set that to the side, and but I like old things, which it's weird to say because it's something futuristic, but in my mind, it's the oldest of the group. So I appreciate not just the outside and the outside aesthetic, but I love the inside, the sets, the bridge, the colors. I love everything about it. So those 2 are probably
at the top of your list.
At the top of my list, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. You'll have to let us know what you think when you listen, and then in a
I
couple
will,
weeks.
Definitely.
Yeah. At 51, I was on 2, and that's relationships. So it was 50 ships, 51 also ships, different kind of ships. So I'm probably going to ask you something similar when that episode comes out. So be ready.
Perfect.
Yeah. We did an episode on Star Trek relationships about a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's a topic that we had in mind before, but yeah.
Yep.
Never. These things never totally go away though. So just because we talked about them before, doesn't mean we can't talk about them again, and things change.
And with more Trek, there's going to be more relationships. So I think we have to, circle back and kind of, add.
Maybe I picked Burnham and Tyler as my number 1. You never know.
Yeah.
Like new Trek relationships. Maybe I picked, Stamets and Culver, like stuff that wasn't quite so much in the conversation when we did our conversation about it. Just have to wait and find out.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have any Star Trek content. Well, I will. No, I'll save that for next week. Speaking of next week, we will be back next week. Probably same time, Saturday, Sunday, like we usually do to kind of talk about the previous episode. Hang in there, guys. Bill and I are working on some content that's not Discovery related, so it'll definitely be a nice little break, and we can start exploring not just Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I miss talking about other Trek as well. So I'd love to get to a point where maybe we can break it up a little bit with something different too. As much as I love talking Discovery, and it's like the number one thing that we got to talk about because it's new and happening now.
Yeah.
I love those other conversations too.
Yep.
So.
You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Definitely go over to Twitter. Sounds like Bill's going to be pretty active this weekend, so definitely go pop over there.
Hope so.
Definitely come over to Discord and the Facebook page also to get your discussion fix. And we'll be back next week. Talked about some more Discovery.
Looking forward to it.
Yep.